At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, World War III apparently kicks off into high gear as Israel attacks Iran with a shock and awe-style aerial assault, taking out its top military leadership and laying heavy damage on the regime's nuclear and ballistic missile systems as the world waits for an Iranian response, which occurred today, and some of those missiles getting through and striking Tel Aviv. We'll bring you more, of course, during Brennan House Live tonight with our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Lavarco. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement recently deported 122 Chinese nationals right back to China as part of President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration in the United States. But what about the 100,000 Chinese military-age males who entered during the Biden regime? Washington, D.C. prepares for Saturday's big military parade with major security upgrades, the likes of which have never been seen in any American city. And President Trump signs legislation to reverse California's policy that would phase out the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brennan House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brennan House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. Leading off tonight, Israel attacked Iran early Friday with a barrage of airstrikes that took out top military officers and hit nuclear and missile sites, calling it just the beginning and raising the potential for an all-out war between the two bitter Middle East adversaries. Israeli leaders said the attack on Iran had been planned for years. Iran quickly retaliated as the Associated Press reported that it sent a swarm of drones at Israel as the supreme leader warned of severe punishment. We, of course, know that, as we covered live at 1 p.m. Central today on radio and television, indeed, over 100, maybe closer to 300 or more ballistic missiles were shot at Israel. The Iron Dome was unable to keep up with all of them, and parts of Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel received direct hits. In Israel, many citizens, they were in panic mode with long lines at grocery stores and shelves, well, quickly going bare. Many have been to their bomb shelters several times, including our reporter in Israel, Aaron Lavarco, and our broadcast partner, Dr. Rob Lindstedt, who's leading a tour right now in Israel and may be able to get a flight out on Monday. Iran had been censored by the UN's atomic watchdog a day earlier for not complying with obligations meant to prevent it from developing a nuclear weapon. For years, Israel had threatened such a strike, and successive American administrations had sought to prevent it, fearing it would ignite a wider conflict across the Middle East and possibly be ineffective at destroying Iran's dispersed and hardened nuclear program. Countries in the region condemned Israel's attack, while leaders around the world called for immediate de-escalation from both sides. That's according to the AP. Israel's military said about 200 aircraft were involved in the initial attack, which included 4 waves of aerial assaults on about 100 targets. 2 security officials said the country's Mossad spy agency was able to smuggle in explosive drones inside Iran ahead of time and then activate them to target missile launchers at an Iranian airbase near Tehran. They said Israel had also smuggled precision weapons into central Iran, as well as strike systems on vehicles, which were activated as the attack began to hit Iranian air defenses. The Israeli attack hit several sites, including Iran's main nuclear enrichment facility at Natanz, where black smoke could be seen rising into the air. Later in the morning, Israel said it had also destroyed dozens of radar installations and surface-to-air missile launchers in western Iran. The Iranian port of Bushehr was seen on Friday on fire. Watch this. Israel military spokesman Brigadier General Efi Derfin said Israel has significantly damaged Natanz and that the operation was, quote, still in the beginning, end quote. Among those killed were 3 of Iran's top military leaders. One who oversaw the entire armed forces, that was General Mohammad Bagheri. One who led the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, that was General Salami, and another who ran the Guard's ballistic missile program. Iran confirmed all 3 deaths, which were, of course, a significant blow to Tehran's governing theocracy and will complicate efforts to retaliate against Israel. President Donald Trump said he was aware of the attack plans beforehand and had tried to warn Iran that it was coming if its leaders did not agree to his denuclearization plan. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement recently deported 122 Chinese nationals back to China, all part of President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration in the United States. In a Monday press release, ICE announced that it returned 122 Chinese illegals to China on June 3rd. ICE confirmed that the deportation flight included 96 males and 26 females, ages 19 to 68. That's according to the press release. The Chinese nationals had, quote, final orders for removal, end quote, and were from various ICE detention facilities throughout the United States. Sharing pictures of the recent Chinese deportations on X, ICE posted, quote, we deported 122 illegal aliens to China on a special high-risk charter flight, end quote. Keep in mind that there are hundreds of thousands of Chinese students in America, so this is a drop in the bucket. At least 100,000 Chinese military-age males entered illegally during the Biden regime. The question is, where are they now? Are they being hunted down by Kristi Noem? Because it might be a good idea to start looking for them if she's not. And hopefully, this is just the beginning of the deportation of Chinese nationals, most of whom many experts believe are tied to the Chinese Communist Party. You don't get to travel abroad as a Chinese citizen unless you're in the good graces of the CCP. And yet, President Trump just posted on Truth Social a couple days ago that the pending trade deal with China includes a provision for continued student visas in large numbers for Chinese students. So, this news release by ICE, well, it should be taken with a grain of salt. They've not scratched the surface in terms of the Chinese who need to be deported. America still has not learned its lesson, even after the arrest of bad actors in the realm of academia, with all the spies and bioweapon smugglers who have been caught just in the last few weeks. American Military News reports that multiple security measures for President Donald Trump's military parade in Washington, D.C. have been announced prior to Saturday's celebration of Flag Day and the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. In a statement obtained by the Associated Press, Matt McCool, who's a spokesperson for the U.S. Secret Service's Washington field office, said his agency was preparing for an enormous turnout. McCool explained that over 18 miles of anti-scale fencing will be installed ahead of the military parade, and that multiple drones will be used to provide security at the event. Here's what he said, quote, "The mission is not just to secure an event, but to ensure public confidence in safety. We want every attendee to feel secure. That's why we are leaving no stone unturned," end quote. According to the Associated Press, U.S. Army officials anticipate roughly 200,000 people will attend Saturday evening's military parade. McCool said the Secret Service's Washington field office is prepared to have hundreds of thousands of people in Washington, D.C. for the parade, and then added, quote, "We have a ton of magnetometers. If 1 million people show up, then we're going to have some lines," end quote. Fox 5 reported that 175 magnetometers used for metal detectors will be deployed at various security checkpoints on Saturday. Thousands of additional FBI and Secret Service agents will be deployed to Washington, D.C. And all U.S. Park Police and Metropolitan Police Department officials will be activated. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Pamela Smith, she told reporters she expects major impacts to traffic on Saturday, saying, quote, "This is a significant event with a large footprint. We're relying on the public to be an extra set of ears and eyes for us," end quote. According to the Associated Press, multiple protests have been planned in Washington, D.C. during the Army's celebration on Saturday. The Wall Street Journal reports that Senators Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Angus King of Maine, both independents, by the way, introduced legislation on Thursday that would ban pharmaceutical companies from promoting prescription drugs directly to consumers, including through television, radio, print, digital platforms, and social media. The proposal would mark a sweeping shift in the American media advertising landscape, where pharmaceutical companies are among the biggest spenders. Prescription drug brands accounted for roughly 13% of all ad spending on television in 2025, totaling around $2.18 billion so far this year. That's according to iSpot data. In 2024, the industry spent $3.4 billion on traditional TV ads between January and August alone. That's according to ad tracking data. Senator Sanders, in a statement, said, quote, "The American people don't want to see misleading and deceptive prescription drug ads on television. They want us to take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and ban these bogus ads," end quote. I don't know that I've ever agreed with Bernie Sanders till now. The legislation, well, it follows longstanding criticisms from Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has repeatedly called for a ban on prescription drug advertising. While running for president, Kennedy said he would issue an executive order removing pharmaceutical ads from television. He was citing over-medication and Big Pharma's influence on news coverage. He said, quote, "We're one of only 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise directly to consumers," end quote. Mr. Kennedy said in a video that was posted to X, quote, "Everybody agrees it's a bad idea," end quote. The United States and New Zealand are currently the only countries that permit direct-to-consumer prescription drug ads, end quote. The LA police chief, Jim McConnell, appeared on CNN and blew the myth of so-called peaceful protest. He blew it right out of the water. He said that his officers are finding all kinds of weapons on the persons that they have been arresting. Watch this.
They have weapons of all kinds. We arrested a number of people last night for curfew violations. I think 14, and 3 out of the 14 were armed with weapons, handguns. And so when you look at that, what appears to be one thing is something very different. We've seen in those backpacks that they'll have hammers, they'll break up curbstones and concrete bollards, break up into smaller pieces, which they'll then throw at police. They put them in backpacks and walk around like that. I've seen somebody today walking around with golf balls in a backpack. So all sorts of weapons, all very potentially dangerous. We've seen commercial-grade fireworks being fired at our people, with shrapnel being put in, from what I'm told, and into some of these packages. Again, that is pretty scary stuff when you look at it. Liquid being thrown on our officers, the attitude of our officers and the professionalism and restraint that they've shown is remarkable. They've done a tremendous job out there, and I'm very proud of them.
The Epoch Times reports that the state of Tennessee filed a civil rights lawsuit on June 11th, challenging the constitutionality of a program that provided federal money to colleges and universities if Hispanic students make up at least 25% of the student body. The lawsuit was brought by the state of Tennessee and Students for Fair Admissions. That's a group whose lawsuit led to the U.S. Supreme Court in 2023 to strike down the use of racial criteria and student admissions at institutions, of course, of higher learning. Wednesday's complaint names the U.S. Department of Education and Education Secretary Linda McMahon as defendants. Plaintiffs argue that the federal government's so-called Hispanic Serving Institutions grant program illegally discriminates based on race and ethnicity, according to the complaint. The Education Department's Hispanic Serving Institutions Division provides what they say is, quote, grant funding to institutions of higher education to assist with strengthening institutional programs, facilities, and services to expand the educational opportunities for Hispanic Americans and other underrepresented populations, end quote. That's, of course, what the Department of Education's website states. Congress, they appropriated $351 million for the program in 2024 alone. That's what the education think tank New America reports. The department may not discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity, quote, even when Congress orders it to, end quote. That's what the complaint states. Despite this, under the Federal Higher Education Act, the department allocates HSI program funding to colleges and universities only if they meet the, quote, arbitrary ethnic threshold of 25% Hispanic, end quote, student enrollment. That's according to the complaint. Tennessee, well, they operate a variety of colleges and universities, all of which serve Hispanic students and low-income students. But not one of them qualifies to receive grants under the HSI program. Why? Because they don't possess, quote, the right mix of ethnicities on campus, end quote. That's what the complaint states. And then says, quote, funds should help needy students regardless of their immutable traits. And the denial of those funds harms students of all races, end quote. Again, according to the complaint. President Donald Trump has signed legislation to reverse a radical California policy that would phase out the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035. The Trump administration says that this legislation is very important. And, of course, I agree. I think many of you do as well. President Trump signed the legislation during a ceremony in the East Room of the White House on Thursday. That's where President Trump said, quote, we officially rescue the U.S. auto industry from destruction by terminating the California electric vehicle mandate once and for all, end quote. Watch this.
I want to thank everybody for being here. We officially rescue the U.S. auto industry from destruction by terminating the California electric vehicle mandate once and for all. They said it couldn't be done, but boy, it's had us tied up in knots for years. And they'd pass these crazy rules in California, and would be 17 states would go by them. The automakers didn't know what to do because they're really building cars for two countries. When you have 17 states, you're building cars for two countries. And I want to congratulate you all the Senate, the House, the whole thing. It's incredible.
California's electric vehicle mandate would have instituted a ban on 100% of all new gas-powered cars and abolished 75% of gas-powered trucks. Watch this.
Think of it, a plan to ban 100, and they call it the 100% ban on all new gas-powered cars and abolish 75% of the gas-powered trucks. 75%. The trucking industry saw me. They said, sir, it doesn't work. Number one, the trucks are so heavy. They're 2.5 times heavier than a diesel-powered truck. So one of the big truckers owns 28,000 trucks, big company, tremendous company. He said, I go out of business immediately. I'm not going to play games. I mean, he said, did you explain these things to the government officials? Like the truck weighs 2.5 times more than a regular truck, a gasoline-powered diesel. And he said, based on that, we have to rebuild every bridge in the United States of America because it wasn't designed to hold cars and trucks that heavy because the batteries are very heavy. They're, probably lead, but they have a lot of things in those batteries that weigh a lot. But it's 2.5 times. It's a simple number, 2.5 times. And if you want to do this, you have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on rebuilding every bridge in the United States, and I guess throughout the world, because they do follow us.
Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. The neocon war drums are beating louder than ever for the U.S. to go to war on multiple fronts with Russia, Iran, and China. All were mentioned as needing a beatdown from the U.S. military. That was at a Senate hearing, and it was dominated by Lindsey Graham. The attack on Iran, well, it followed the next day. Now we have Russia and China's next move to be concerned about. Pro-war propaganda show, well, it started when General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told senators that he does not believe Russian President Vladimir Putin would stop at Ukraine if he succeeded in conquering the country. Kane, well, he made the comment during testimony before the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense. That's where he appeared alongside Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to address U.S. military posture and global threats. When Senator Lindsey Graham asked whether he believed Putin would stop at Ukraine's borders, Kane said, quote, I don't think he is, end quote. Hegseth, who was asked the same question, responded more cautiously, quote, remains to be seen, end quote. Of course, Graham is a notorious Russia hater and neoconservative war hawk, and he dismissed Hegseth's answer, and many think talked down to him when he said, quote, it doesn't remain to be seen. Putin tells everybody around what he wants to do, end quote. Graham pointed to Russia's stockpiling of weapons over and above what is needed for the, war in Ukraine. That's what he says. Of course, the reason for that should be obvious to any objective military analyst. Russia knows it's not just fighting Ukraine. It's the whole of NATO, using Ukraine as its proxy war machine. Even Secretary of State Marco Rubio has admitted this. And the NATO war machine has continuously expanded into, Putin's backyard. The leaders of France, Britain, and Germany, they have all talked about their desires to make Ukraine a NATO member and send in their troops to help fight Russia. But Lindsey Graham continues to push the tired old neocon narrative of an expansionist Russia, when all you need is a modern political map to see that the biggest threat to peace in Europe is an expansion of NATO. It's just NATO encroaching closer and closer to Russia. In fact, it's up to 32 countries now, with Finland and Sweden having joined the Western military alliance in just the last couple of years. They've nearly completed the surrounding of Russia's western flank. All they need to complete that strategic maneuver is for Ukraine to join NATO. If they could offer Putin a guarantee that Ukraine won't join NATO, he could be convinced to end the war. But Washington and its allies just won't do that. To cover NATO's own aggressive chess moves, Lindsey Graham and his fellow neocons, they continue to accuse Russia of, well, what NATO is actually guilty of doing. And worse yet, they roll out the old trop about Russia is Nazi Germany. Putin is Hitler. They did it again at Wednesday's Senate hearing. Hitler, he said, wanted to kill all the Jews. That's what Graham said, arguing that Western leaders miscalculated and did not think that Hitler was serious, missing, of course, an opportunity to act early and potentially head off the Holocaust. He said, quote, the danger of that is that like 50 million people get killed, end quote. That's what Graham said. And then he said, quote, so let's don't do that now, end quote. Well, folks, the kind of rhetoric is really not helpful in a world that's really on the brink of global conflict. I mean, not only is it reckless, it's not true. What proof do we have that Putin is on the verge of trying to carry out some kind of Holocaust? I'm not a Putin defender. But what I am is someone that doesn't want to go to war. I don't want to see my sons drafted. Do you want to see your sons drafted? Your grandsons? Then go to World War III. Spread us thin in multiple theaters all over the world and see what happens. And to think that it won't touch the country is partly what burns me up. All of this talk, well, it's like over there, it's over in Israel, and it's Iran, and it's Russia and Ukraine, and these people don't realize the terror cells that are here among us, cyber attacks, biological weapons. It's never a good idea to provoke people to go to war. It's always better to sit down and calmly talk and try to reason things out to the advantage of all parties involved. But I don't think that's what Graham wants to do. In fact, Graham and General Kane didn't provide any evidence that Putin has made a public statement of any kind comparable to those of Hitler. I haven't seen it. They just accused him of it. And then I guess we're supposed to believe them. But his threats, they have always been in the context of responding to Western military escalations, crossing Russian red lines. You do this, and I'll do that. This is something that President Trump does almost every day with his rhetoric. It doesn't make a leader like Hitler. One of these days, Putin will make good on his threats. And that'll probably be after the West has pushed him too far. And Lindsey Graham, who I don't think has any children, does he? Certainly not a son that can be drafted into the military and go off to a war to die in a foreign country. And when they push Putin too far and he responds, Lindsey Graham, with a straight face, will look right into the cameras and say, see, I told you. I told you Putin was Hitler. I think they're trying to set up the narrative and then walk Putin into the trap. So far, he hasn't taken the bait. I pray he doesn't, for our sakes. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast. You can do that by going to worldviewfoundation.com. We do need your support. We are a listener-supported program. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.